The CIA once spent $20 million to turn a cat into a spy, and it failed in the most catastrophic way possible. This wasn't some movie plot. This was a real, declassified operation straight from the height of the Cold War. They took an ordinary house cat, performed invasive surgery to turn it into a walking, purring surveillance device, and then sent it on its very first mission. What happened next is so absurd, so tragic, and so unbelievable. You'll wonder how it ever got approved. This declassified operation sounds like fiction, but every single word is true. Stick around to find out how the CIA's most bizarre project ended in less than 5 minutes. To understand why anyone would think a spy cat was a good idea, you have to go back to the 1960s. The Cold War was at its peak. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a terrifying stalemate, and paranoia was everywhere. The CIA was under immense pressure to get any advantage, any piece of intelligence they could, on their Soviet counterparts. They were desperate for new, creative, and completely undetectable ways to listen in on enemy conversations. This desperation fueled a sort of mad scientist mentality within the agency. No idea was too strange, no concept too wild to at least consider. They were throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick. And that's when someone, somewhere in a top-secret meeting, suggested a cat. The idea of using animals for espionage wasn't entirely new. Pigeons had carried messages for centuries, but this was different. This was high-tech. The proposal came from the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology, the same division that would later develop stealth aircraft. Their logic was simple, if a bit strange. Who pays attention to a stray cat? Cats can wander almost anywhere, slipping under fences, through open windows, and sitting under park benches, completely unnoticed. They're the perfect stealthy agents, already built in with silent movement and the ability to be ignored by humans. So, the plan was born. Surgically implant a cat with state-of-the-art listening equipment and train it to go sit near Havali's Soviet targets. The project was given the code name Acoustic Kitty, and it was approved with a multi-million-dollar budget. The team was confident they could pull it off. But how do you actually turn a living, breathing animal into a sophisticated recording device? The answer was as gruesome as it was ambitious. The surgery itself was a marvel of miniature 1960s technology and a veterinary nightmare. Over the course of a 1-hour procedure, a team of specialists transformed the animal into a cyborg spy. They implanted a tiny microphone into the cat's ear canal to capture sound. A small radio transmitter was placed at the base of its skull to send the audio back to a nearby listening post. An antenna was carefully woven into the fur along its tail, making it nearly invisible. And to power the whole system, a battery pack was surgically inserted into its chest cavity. The cat survived the procedure, and after a period of recovery, it was, in theory, a fully functional intelligence-gathering asset. Imagine the meeting where this was approved. Imagine the scientists and surgeons looking at their creation, a Frankenstein's cat, and thinking, this is it. This is the future of espionage. The technical part was done. Now came the hard part. Training. They had successfully built a spy. Now they had to teach it how to spy. This is where the entire $20 million project began to unravel. The CIA quickly discovered something that every cat owner on the planet already knows. You tell a cat what to do. The initial training sessions were a complete disaster. They would try to direct the cat towards a simulated target, but it had other priorities. The first major problem was hunger. The surgeons had tried to bypass the cat's sense of hunger to make it more focused, but it didn't work. The cat would wander off in search of a snack. The second problem was simple curiosity. It would get distracted by a butterfly, a sound, or just an interesting smell and completely forget its mission. The CIA operatives tried for months, even years, to condition the cat using complex reward systems and audio cues, but its behavior remained completely unpredictable. It was, after all, a cat. The frustration within the agency was growing. Costs was soaring, and they had nothing to show for it but a very expensive, surgically altered cat that preferred napping and sunbeams to eavesdropping on communists. The pressure was mounting. After all this investment, they finally decided it was time for a real-world test. The mission was set. On a cool day in Washington, D.C., a team of CIA operatives pulled up in an unmarked van near a park. Their target, 2 men sitting on a bench, suspected of being KGB agents. Inside the van was Acoustic Kitty, prepped and ready for its first, and what would be its only field operation. The plan was simple. Release the cat, and it would casually wander over to the bench, sit underneath, and transmit the men's conversation back to the van. The agents opened the van door. The cat hopped out and took a few steps onto the sidewalk. For a brief moment, it looked like it might actually work. The cat started moving in the general direction of the targets. The agents held their breath. This was it, the culmination of years of work and millions of dollars. And then the cat stopped, looked the other way, and walked directly into the middle of the street. It was hit almost instantly by a taxi. The mission was over in less than 5 minutes. The $20 million spy was gone. The agents in the van could only sit there in stunned silence, watching as their top-secret project literally became roadkill. The sheer absurdity and tragedy of the moment was a crushing end to one of the strangest chapters in CIA history. The project was immediately canceled. In a declassified memo from 2001, the CIA concluded that while the scientific work had been a success, the environmental and security factors in using this technique in a real foreign situation forced us to conclude that for our purposes, it would not be practical. That's a massive understatement. The total cost is estimated to have been between $15 and $20 million, and it produced absolutely zero useful intelligence. Interestingly, this wasn't the CIA's only attempt to use animals. They experimented with spy dolphins and even attached cameras to pigeons. But Acoustic Kitty stands out for its sheer, almost comical, absurdity. Was this a genuine attempt at innovation, or was it a sign of Cold War insanity? The answer is probably a bit of both. It highlights a time when the stakes were so high that even the most far-fetched ideas were given a serious look. So what can we learn from this $20 million feline failure? It's a perfect example of what happens during times of intense desperation. The pressure to innovate can sometimes lead to moonshot thinking that completely ignores practical reality. It's a human tendency to overcomplicate things, to believe that a technologically complex solution is always better. But in this case, the simplest explanation was the right one all along. Cats. Cats. You can implant them with transmitters and microphones, but you can't program out their fundamental nature. The story of Operation Acoustic Kitty is a bizarre, expensive, and ultimately tragic footnote in the history of a project born from Cold War paranoia that ended with a taxi in a Washington, D.C. park. It serves as a permanent reminder that sometimes, no matter how much money you spend or how advanced your technology is, you just can't hurt cats. And believe it or not, this wasn't even the CIA's strangest project. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as wild as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more declassified history. Let me know in the comments, what's the most bizarre government project you've ever heard of? See you next time.